Development in the last hour or so. The family of slain Emmanuel Mbense, who was mentioned by Witness D at the Madlanga Commission, has approached AfriForum's private prosecution unit in a bid for justice. AfriForum's Barry Bateman joins us now for more on this. He speaks on behalf of the private prosecutions unit. Barry, good afternoon to you. What do we know about what happened to Mbense? We heard how his murder was detailed by Witness D. We now know Witness D was Marius van der Merwe. Van der Merwe was then murdered after giving his testimony over the weekend. What happened to Mbense?
Well, Stephen, unfortunately, we and the family know as much as what Mr. van der Merwe testified about, because Emmanuel Mbense's family have been kept in the dark. They learnt, and this is the tragedy of this year, they learned the details of how their son and brother and father was tortured, tubed, waterboarding over a period of time and eventually dumped in a dam. They heard this for the first time when they listened to Mr. van der Merwe's testimony. They got a warning that morning from an IPID investigator saying, you can expect some information coming out at the Madlanga Commission today. So we know as much as the family knows, and the family has learnt about what has been presented on television.
Was IPID investigating this before? Was it known before the testimony that members of the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department might have been involved?
Well, you just got to go by the evidence of Mr. van der Merwe, and you've got to go by the evidence of Rivo Spies, who's also a former EMPD senior official, that as far back as July 2022, there were meetings between van der Merwe and the Independent Police Investigating Directorate, and then subsequently early in 2023, van der Merwe says he even did a pointing out of the dam where he dumped the body. So the IPID has been involved all this time. From the family, sorry about that, the family of Mr. Mbense, they found out or were approached, Stephen, I just got caught off guard there. The family of Mr. Mbense, they approached the police and they started asking questions, and they wanted to know what is going on in the case. They were dismissed at the Brakpan SAPS. They eventually had to escalate it. It was his brother who went all the way to the Gauteng Provincial Police and demanded a meeting and met with a colonel. And it was a colonel who eventually then referred the family to IPID. IPID has been stringing along the family since then. Every time they go for a follow-up or want to find out what's happening, they get told that the investigation is continuing. Arrests are imminent. And this is supported by what Mr. Rivo Spies said as well during his evidence. So IPID has been on this case. Why they haven't arrested these people who've been directly implicated by what is clearly a Section 204 witness is something that they must come and explain.
So, I mean, this has been going on for a long time, and from what you say, IPID and the police themselves have done nothing at all to investigate, and this happened in 2022.
Stephen, it's absolutely shocking what has happened here. You've got a witness who says, by his own version, who has stated it publicly now, that he was on the scene and he partook in the torture of an individual. That person was murdered, and he partook in the dumping the body away. IPID has known about this case and has been investigating since July, and they haven't, and they had a 204, as we understand from the evidence, but they didn't act upon this. In the interim, we now know that we obviously can't say if there's any link between Mr. van der Merwe's murder and his evidence that he would have provided in a case like this, but it is certainly concerning. What we say, Stephen, is that there's been a lot of talk about witness protection and so on. Mr. van der Merwe testified in a public forum. He is a witness, and he disclosed all of the evidence that he was potentially going to present to a court in a criminal trial to try and hold people accountable for a murder. That was put out in the public domain outside of a process that would have been a criminal court through the criminal justice system. Had there been steps taken earlier to ensure the matter was enrolled, the Criminal Procedure Act kicks in, and all the mechanisms that already exist to ensure the protection of witnesses could come into play. The prosecutors could use the power that they're authorized to use through the courts and the law to ensure the protection of witnesses. And where there's any concern that a witness might be in danger caused by an accused person or anybody else, the courts can act accordingly and impose conditions that will ensure the safety of witnesses.
All right, Barry, what do you want to happen now as AfriForum? What are you expecting from the authorities? And I presume part of this is that IPID may now, I imagine on your version, need to explain why they didn't act before.
Well, that's the first thing we're asking. We want a meaningful progress update. The family of Mr. Mbense have been asking, and Stephen, I tell you, they've been asking regularly, the police and IPID, and they've simply been pushed off and saying they've been strung along the whole time. So we're asking for an update. Where is this case at the moment, and when can we expect action? What I can tell you is that we sent the letter to the head of IPID yesterday afternoon. Yesterday evening, an IPID investigator called Mr. Mbense's brother saying, you can expect arrests soon. We are 95% finished with the investigation. You expect action soon. Well, we've heard that before. Let's see what's going to be coming. And we will explore further options as we go forward, because we're not letting this go, that this has been sitting, the IPID's been sitting on this for 3 years, knowing full well they have a Section 204 witness available to implicate the parties.
We've seen many other reports in the past that IPID has not really acted against police officers, even in cases of murder. Some of the cases have been quite extraordinary. Is this sort of part of a pattern in some kind? IPID clearly now, we haven't heard their version yet, but they would need to explain why there's been such a long delay. And I imagine the speculation would then be that perhaps they were defending or protecting or just refusing to act against members of the police or the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department.
Well, there's going to have to be some kind of explanation, but I think you're spot on what you're saying. This is just a furtherance of a trend that we've been seeing for as long as we can go back and look at IPID investigations. But the mere fact that the revelations that we're referring to here emerged at a commission of inquiry, if you look at there are several processes that are happening at the same time, but at the center of all of these are questions related to the criminal justice system and the collapse of the criminal justice system. Whether it's the DPP in South Gauteng, his fitness to hold office that's being investigated. We've got the ad hoc committee and other processes. The big question and central to this is the failure by the state to properly investigate and prosecute cases against people who've been implicated in criminal proceeding or criminal actions. So I think you're quite right. This is something that we've seen for a long time. And unfortunately, until there's big changes and the authorities simply act on what their duties are, Stephen, that's the thing. Do what you're expected to do, and we'll start addressing the issues of corruption, crime, murder, and so on, and people will start being held accountable for their actions.
Barry Bateman, thank you. Spokesperson for the Private Prosecutions Unit of AfriForum.